These instructions are meant to be concise. Some essential explanations are given, but lengthy explanations have been omitted. Because we operate using one transmitter in several small teams with various experience, the defaults for the contests require some compromises. When don't use or don't change is advised, it is because that function has already been preset for the contest to be workable for most contest conditions. When the preset default settings are disturbed, they can be reset incorrectly or not at all. This creates problems for the subsequent operators who may not be familiar with the equipment. This is the Ameritron ALS-600 power amplifier. This is the MFJ Versatuner III. This is the Icom IC 7410 transceiver. To turn on the transceiver, you use the power supply and just leave this power button on the transceiver on all the time. Don't touch it. Okay, we're going to look at the other buttons on the transceiver. Leave the transmit button where it is on. We're going to control transmitting by using the PTT button on the microphone stand down here. This antenna meter button is kind of tricky. It's a toggle button, but it goes, if you just touch it, it changes the antenna. If you can see it there, it says antenna 2. Then it goes back, if you just touch it, it goes back to antenna 1. Leave it at antenna 1 because antenna 1 is connected to the antenna on the roof of the radio room. Here is the one that we use, this one, and this one is connected to nothing. If you come around here and look at the icon in this upper left hand corner here, you can see that changes, and if you happen to have it on 2, you won't hear anything and you can't transmit. So be sure not to push that accidentally. Now, if you want to change these two lines, ALC and SWR, we like to keep it on ALC SWR because this SWR is a great meter. But you can, if you hold it, it changes, you see, to ALC and comp. Then we have preset the compression. That's down here. We've checked that by listening to it, and that's the best way to leave. In this position is the best way to leave the comp. So we'll go back and put it on ALC and SWR. Okay, these are some jacks and things you're not going to use. This is the noise reduction noise blanker knob. The noise blanker isn't going to be needed, and so you can leave it off. It's off now, otherwise it says NB down here. To turn on the reason for the noise reduction is to get rid of that crackling and staticky sound in the background. Here you can hear it. That's with it off, and that's with it's on. It pretty much gets rid of that, and for contest, it's best to leave the noise reduction on and in the 12 o'clock position. I'll turn down the audio now again, and the next knob down is the mic and power supply. We've checked these out before. The best place to leave the microphone is straight up, and the RF power at about 1 o'clock. Then the next knob down is the audio amplifier function, and this is basically a volume control. That this is adjustable and should be adjusted to the operator's convenience.
Use your left hand, I can see it better.
The RF squelch is here, and it should be left in approximately this position during the whole contest.
Turn it down just a hair. Okay. The buttons across here are function buttons, and they have been set. They should be left alone. They actually relate to these menu functions here, and we will leave those are also all preset. Down along here, this is the menu button. We won't be using that. And the other functions down here are to select the mode of modulation: single sideband, CW, RTTY, AM and FM. This one's a little tricky because it toggles between AM, FM, and off, and it goes off when you select another band. But if we're going to be using it for tuning. Remember, to get the FM, you may have to push it twice. Look for the icon up here, and you can see it change. We'll go back to the single sideband. That's what we're going to be using most of the time. It automatically selects upper sideband for 20 meters and up to 10 meters. And at 80 and 40, it automatically selects lower sidebands. You don't have to worry about it. That's handy.
Okay, then we have the preamp, and we have the preamp on the first position, and that's appropriate for this contest.
Point out again, it says preamp there.
See where it's
preamp with the 1 underneath.
Right. Yeah.
Okay. Good.
And the others, Vox compression, we've already set, and the monitor you don't need. Now there's one other button here, the filter button. The filter button selects, you can see there are here 3 different filters. We leave it on 2. 2 gives you sort of an intermediate range of filtering, and it's best to just leave it there. This is the keypad for selecting the different frequencies and bands. It's a little confusing because when we get to the amplifier, it's in meters, but it shows you what, for instance, 20 meters is 14 megahertz. If you want 80 meters, it's going to be 3.5 on here. Okay. The next are these AB, 2 AB buttons. Don't use those. All of these buttons along here, and below this level are not used. The TS button is. The TS button gives you rapid tuning, and when you push the button, it moves very fast, and this little sort of crescenty looking thing pops up over here, and these turn to zeros. But I think for most of the time it's best to just leave it alone. Then you get finer tuning, but it's more useful for working a contest. This is the main tuning knob for the VFOs, and we're going to be on 1 frequency. The numbers will change depending on what the last frequency on the band when you left it last, where you were. This is the passband tuning knob. It's coaxial, so there are 2 parts to it. One controls, this is the little
icon that shows you what your passband is after you've turned it on. You can move that up and down. It also shows you how far each direction you've gone. As you can see, that's coming down on the right side there of your passband. And with this one, you come down on the left side of the passband. So if there's a station interfering below you, you can get rid of it this way, and above you this way.
So you use the outer knob for the left shoulder, and the inner wider knob for the right shoulder of the tuning.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Okay, and then remember to turn it off when you're done. Or make sure that it's set so that this number is 0 here.
Okay. Show me the 0 again.
Okay. Let me just see here. There. It's sort of fleeting when it goes to 0.
Yeah, we got it.
Okay. Now this notch and CW pitch control are not needed. It's for notching out heterodynes, and they're pretty infrequent during a contest. And this is the received instrumental tuning button, the RIT button. It is useful if by some chance, maybe in an older radio that's calling you or something, is off your frequency, your transmit frequency a little bit. You can move up or down a little bit on frequency by pushing this button. You see this RIT thing go on here, and if you go one direction, it goes down in frequency, and the other direction it goes up. Be sure and turn that off when you're done, otherwise it confuses you when you're trying to listen to the next station. One last button to know about is this lock button. This is to lock the frequency and all of the functions on the radio. It's another thing you may accidentally push and have trouble. Just remember that it does have a lock function, and you can unlock it by just pushing this button here. See the little lock icon up there? If that's there, get rid of it. Now we're going to go to the amplifier and turn it on. You want to have the standby button pushed down here, because you don't want to fire it up yet until you get things ready. On the frequency button here has to be changed every time you change bands using this, and we're only going to use 80, 40, 20, and 15, and 10 meters, and they're all marked with these little arrows. The ALC button down here should just be left at 5. Okay, now we're going to go to the antenna tuner. These buttons should be adjusted with this one in the in position. That is on high.
So range should be on the in position.
Yep, and power should be on peak. And that's an in position, and the lamp should be turned on. Now be sure that the frequency rotary switch on the amplifier is in the correct band and matches the frequency selected over here in the pad. And here we have 20 meters and 14 megahertz has been selected, so we're in the right band. If you're operating on the 10 to 40 meter bands, be sure the coax is connected by Kaiser's coax jumper to the 10 to 40 meter beam connector. That is located on the panel high up in the middle of the radio room. If you're using 80 meters, that jumper must be moved to connect to the 80 meter, that is the inverted V coax connector,
and back again when you are finished using 80 meters. Now we're going to go through the tuning up procedure. This would be done when we first start out, and then anytime the band is changed. We will have pre-filled out a form like this, which gives all of the correct settings for the antennas at the Kaiser Center. I've only just filled in my ones here for 20 meters at my shack at home, and we will follow these as we set up now. The settings that need to be made are particularly with the transmitter and antenna and inductance knobs. This knob on the antenna tuner is always left on coax 1, and again, if it accidentally gets moved to another one, you won't hear anything. So don't touch that one. Now we're going to move over to the transceiver. We want to make sure the microphone setting is at straight up at noon, 12 o'clock, and the RF power is set at 1 o'clock. We also now need to be sure that we're not going to step on somebody. So we want to turn up the volume, make sure we're on single sideband. Let's go to single sideband. Listen for stations, and that seems to be clear enough. Go back to FM. If it comes up AM there, you need to poke it one more time till you get an FM here. Now,
okay, bring the speaker down.
We need to use the PTT to turn on the carrier, and we'll push down on that, and notice that we've got pretty good numbers here. We probably can get a little less reflected power, so we would tune first the inductance to get that needle right down to the bottom, this one right here, and also the fewest dots here on the SWR gauge that you see right there. This can probably stand a little more tuning with the transmitter side. Oops, went it way down there. That's got it. It's giving us the most power output and the least reflected power up here. Now with that setting, we know that the low power, that the SWR is probably all right. So we go back to the single sideband. Okay, now we're going to go back to the amplifier, make sure that it's turned on to operate, and we're going to push the PTT button on the microphone and just say 111 like that. 111 111. You can see we have a pretty low SWR here, and also we can see that there's only one or two little dots on the SWR meter here. That's also very good, and also we're hitting exactly the power that we want on peaks. Speaking about 6 inches or 4 inches away from the microphone, we're getting up to occasionally bouncing over 600, but bouncing about to 600 PEP, watts PEP. Keep an eye on the power output on this meter. It should not go much above 600, and if it does, you should probably back down on the RF power gain a little bit. It's hard on the amplifier if it's being driven to more than 600 on peaks. Also, if you're not getting over 400, you can turn it up a little bit, turn it clockwise a little bit, but don't drive it so hard that again it goes over 600.
One of the things we need to cover is changing bands. Every time you change bands, you follow the same procedure that we just did to find the right frequency and make sure it's tuned adequately. But here are some things to remember, and things that are sometimes forgotten and in the process. First, be sure to put the amplifier on standby as the first step, and then back to operate after you finish tuning up. Then also remember to switch the transceiver to FM here before you actually tune up with the tuner. That keeps you on low power, cuts down the amount of interference you're creating on the band, and also avoids tripping the no fault mechanism in the amplifier, which we'll talk about in a minute. Also make sure that the rotary switch on the amplifier is on the band that you want, and that it matches the frequency. For instance, on 20 meters, it should say you should have pushed 14, and this frequency should say 14. Be sure that they're the same. There's a 14 here and 14 there. Looked at the log designation on the computer. Now the computer should follow the changes in band on the transceiver, but sometimes if it's not working, it doesn't change the logging frequency or logging band, and that really messes up the logging. So it's a good idea just each time you change bands to make sure the band you go to is the band that's now showing on the computer, the logging computer. Be sure if you're moving to 80 meters or back from 80 meters to 10 or 40 meters that you switch the antenna coax jumper connections, as we mentioned before. Also, do not change bands more often than every 10 minutes. That's against the rules of the contest. At some point while tuning up or operating, you may encounter a load fault, which is also known as an amplifier thermal shutdown. I'll simulate one here. There we did. You notice that this red light goes on, and then there's no amplification after that. And you need to wait 15 seconds or so, and you can you can turn it back on by pushing the standby button down and then pushing it back to operate.
So you're resetting the amplifier when you're doing that, and then you wait how long?
About 15 seconds.
15 seconds.
And this feature is in there to protect the amplifier. What it senses is a large mismatch. Usually, it's usually a high SWR that's causing the problem, and it protects the final amplifying transistors in this amplifier from overheating and burning up and costing you many hundreds of dollars to replace. So it's actually a good thing, but it can be annoying. So I should tell you how to get out of that. I did show you that by switching this you can go back, but don't switch back right away. Let it sit and then check a few things. And here are the things you need to check. Be sure that your SWR is okay by with this off, trying to retune it and make sure that the SWR is right, and follow the same method of tuning that we've done before.
Discussed earlier.
Discussed earlier, yeah. And then try again. There are some other things you can check for. One of them is common, and it's what happened here. I put this on 40 meters, and it should have been on 20. and that would cause a load fault. It's one of the things you might have forgotten to do. Also, on some bands we find that it tends to, in certain parts of the band, load fault even though the SWR seems to be low. So one of the things, besides just making sure it's as low as possible, is to just turn down the amount of RF power. Turn it down 1 or 2 notches, and you can usually get 4 or 3 or 450 watts PEP out of here that you see on the meter, and that's very good. We have such a good antenna at the Kaiser Center that that kind of power will work all right, and that may avoid having the load fault go off. Another thing that you can do is to just turn it off and go barefoot, particularly if there's a station that you really want to get and you don't want to just give up being on that frequency. Go ahead, keep operating on that frequency on barefoot, that is without the amplifier. And because we have such a good antenna, you're very likely, if you just have patience, to get them anyway. The other thing to do is just to go to some other place in the band if you're not looking for a particular station, and usually it'll work there.
Actually, I think we know that this, I was talking to a phone before we got on the air, telling him, you know, it's never the